Hi everybody, welcome to part 3 of my little tutorial about reactive Clojure, in which I'm going to build a little contacts app. And in this part we're going to cover how to fetch contacts from the server side instead of having them hard-coded in our ClojureScript file. Well, it actually means the following, that we're going to cover the following steps. First of all, we're going to integrate sente. I don't know how this is going, how this should be pronounced. I'm just going to say sente. Sente is a little library that implements client-server communication channels, which for well, most probably it's going to be a WebSocket nowadays, but I think it also has the feature of falling back to Ajax if WebSockets are not available. So we're going to integrate this into our application on the client and on the server side. Then we're going to move the hard-coded contacts from our ClojureScript file to the server file. And finally, we're implementing to make it explicit, a little button which, when you click it, fetches the the contacts from the server. So, and finally, like always, I hope it's fun for you and encourages you to try your own stuff at home and have fun. Okay, so let's get started. First of all, we're going to have to integrate sente into our application. So I have the sente page open here, and we're going to do a bit of copy and pasting to get this set up. First of all, let's open the project CLJ file and integrate, actually the first thing we need to do is kick out our Jetty adapter that is serving our web port at the moment, and instead use HTTP-Kit, because that is an async web server which supports sente, or which sente needs to work actually. So we're going to introduce this one as a dependency. No, I think it was 19, wasn't it? Yeah, well, 18 on this page, but I think 19 is already out. And then we have to integrate the sente stuff, which has come tau in so sente. Oops, which is actually version 1.6.0. Okay, so next thing is open our server side file and integrate. Well, first thing we're going to do is kick out Jetty, so we can uncomment or comment this line, and instead use, what was it, org HTTP kit server here. Kit server as HTTP kit, I would say. And then we're searching the line which is calling our Jetty right now. We can just comment this out and instead use HTTP kit run server, it's called, and for the parameters it's just the same, port join false, like this. Okay, so now we've replaced Jetty with the HTTP-Kit web server, which is a good thing. Okay, next thing is looking at the sente page again. First of all, we're going to copy and paste a bit. Like, for example, the first thing is this require here. for Sente itself. Next thing is, because we're using HTTP kit, is this line here, which imports the necessary sente web server adapter, and then this whole bunch of code snippet here. I'm just placing it between a template and the roots. Okay, like this. Which does, well, actually set up all this stuff. You maybe have to think about yourself if you want to do this a little bit more elegantly, because this is rather global stuff here, but I won't be covering how to do this in a nicer way. We're just interested in seeing how the client-server communication is working. Okay, so next step is introduce these two lines for our Sente roots, actually. Okay, so now I also have to refer to the post symbol here. Yeah, I think that's it for the server side. Now to the client side, it's similar. Let's open the CLJS file and include these requires. Well, actually require macros, because it seems to be working with the core async stuff, and also the core async stuff and the Sente methods here. Okay, and then another global block like this one here, which is doing the setup for the Websockets, actually, like this. Well, I think that's it now. That's a basic setup, which won't help us much yet, but when we are running the application, we should see a WebSocket coming up, and just the communication in that WebSocket should be just pinging now and then, which is some kind of keep alive for the Sente stuff. Okay, so what we're going to do then is implement a button, as I said, afterwards, and fetch the contacts from the server. So now I connect my Emacs, like always, to the REPL. Then I run the application. Let's see if it's working instantly. Let's load the page. Okay, looks fine. Actually, it looks fine. So let's look at the network tab here in the inspector, WebSockets. Let's reload the page again. Okay, so now we see 3 WebSockets. 2 of them are just because of the development environment of the Chestnut stuff. One is the Figwheel thing, which is managing the uploading of the JavaScript whenever you change your ClojureScript in your editor. The second one is the browser-REPL, which we are not using right now. And the third one, with the CHSK here, is our WebSocket, which we've introduced via our Sente integration, as you can see. So there's some handshake going on and some ping stuff as well. Okay, so that doesn't help us much yet. So we're going back to the server, and we should be introducing some means by which we handle messages that are coming in on the server side. There's a function in it in Sente which is I don't remember exactly. Let me see. Yeah, okay, so first of all, we're defining a router and we're defining a stop and a start function. So whenever we need to restart the router, or well, actually router here means the router which is for the asynchronous stuff of the sente communication. So that's not the same as the Compojure or ring router that you've probably installed. So that's a separate routing here. Let's just, when we start the router, then make sure it's stopped. Oh well, actually we don't have to do that. But we want to assign to our router atom a new value, which is actually start chsk router. And then we're passing this function here, which is a sente function. This function here just starts a router that is listening on the channel of the incoming messages from the client. We're passing it the channel that we've set up over here. So that's the receiving channel here. And so then we're passing some arbitrary function or handler that we have to implement right now. So what this does here is start listening on the channel, and whenever a message comes in, call this event handler here. And we're implementing this event handler as well. Like, first of all, just do dump printing of the data that comes in. And then, well, that's also not too nice, but just for the sake of demonstration, we're starting the router like this. Maybe, yeah, okay. So let's try if this is working without having to restart. Okay, so that works, and it seems. Well, what you can see in the REPL here is just a message that came in from the channel, which is just one of these ping messages here. I think you have an ID there. Oh, there's a port open. That was the first message, yeah. And then now comes the ping. And you can see the ID here. With maybe we should print the ID here instead of like this, for example. Yeah, okay. Yeah, of course I'm dumb. Okay, so now let's see if this works. Let's wait for another ping. I think it won't have changed now, yeah. So we have to stop and start the router. Like this, and now let's hope it's working. Wait for another ping. And then we should see the ID, which is just yeah, okay, yeah, that seems to work. Okay, great. Now what we want to do is we don't want to listen for these pings, of course. We just want to listen on specific customized messages that we've sent to the server. So what we probably want to do is when, or no, let namespace or now we can keep it simpler than that for now. When ID is, like say, contacts fetch, then we want to print ID. Compile it, stop router, start router. And now we won't see any messages here because this message we are listening on is actually not passed yet into the channel. We have to implement this now on the client side. Let's wait for a ping and just to make sure that we don't see the stuff here anymore. Okay, so here's the ping, and as you can see, it doesn't print anything anymore. Okay, so going back to the client side, let's just look at the contacts list view. We'll just append to the contacts list view a button which has a on-click handler, which will, well, actually what we can do now is the sente stuff here, setup stuff, has defined a global function called chsk send, and we can use that to send stuff to the server. So we can call that. So let's do this. chsk send. And now the format, or what this method expects, we can look it up here in the sente documentation. So client-side API is what we're looking for. chsk send is expecting an event, and an event looks like this. So it has some namespace keyword there and some data, and we're just going to put the namespace keyword there. We said, I think we said contacts fetch, and that's it. So okay, of course I have to give some string. Let's call it fetch contacts. And now let's reload the page because we have too many sockets open here. Don't want to get confused. When I click this, we should now see a message appearing here in that channel. Yeah, exactly. Contacts fetch. But what we don't see is the message on the server side. Okay, so why? Let's try to debug this. Stop router, start router. And when I click the fetch contacts, it says contacts fetch, but it doesn't match. Well, okay. So maybe I'm not really this happens. This is true, so why does it not match? Okay, once more. Okay, it does. The problem was that I was using print and not println. Okay, so it was buffering the output on the console here. Okay, so everything is fine. When I click the button, we see that the message goes through our WebSocket and, well, arrives at our server side here. So what we want to do now is we need to, well, actually we can't just return or evaluate to a value that we want the client side to receive, because this is all asynchronous. We have to call some callback. First of all, we have to provide some callback on the client side. Let's go back to the core CLJS. Okay, let's look at the documentation again. We can now specify after the event a timeout. Let's set this to 10 seconds and a callback. Like this. Now actually what's going to happen now when I click the button, or what I would be expecting it to happen, is that the timeout should occur, because we're not doing anything with the callback on the server side yet. So when I click this, we see we're receiving a message, and after 10 seconds we're going to see some timeout. Yeah. Okay, so when it gets called, actually. Okay, so after the, yeah, okay, so I understand. This always gets called, even for a timeout. So let's have a look. Like this. And let's make this 3 seconds, so we don't have to wait that long. 1, 2, 3. And yeah, okay, so what we get back here is a timeout. And you have to take care that you handle this correctly. But what we want here to receive is the data for our contacts. So what we should do here is when, no, hold on, I think we also have to do here reply fn, like this. That's the kind of symbol this reply function gets bound to when you provide it on the client side. When reply fn is there, then call reply fn with the data, like for example 1, 2, 3 in the first step. And I have to compile it again. I have to stop the router and start the router, and then call this. Okay, that seems to be working, because the callback returns immediately when I click the button, and it gives us the 1, 2, 3. Okay, so what we want to do here on the server side is we want to check when not equals chsk timeout. So we have to check the response for the timeout value, and we only want to do stuff when it's not the timeout value. Okay. And what we want to do in this case is we want to call transact, and we want to replace contacts. That's actually what we have here, with a function hold value. Oh, we don't care about this, we just want to set it. Well, actually, want to set it with response, right? Yeah. No. Okay, so of course we are not getting a correct data yet. So let's just go to our client side, cut this contacts array, go to the server side, and paste it into, well, that's hard, paste it hard into our component here, or function. So once again, stop router, oops, no, and start router. And then, of course, when we now load the page, as we've removed the data from our client-side code, our contacts list is empty right now, initially. And now when we click it, it gets filled. So that's nice. Okay, once more, let's have a look at the WebSocket. Reload the page to get an initial impression of all this. When I click it, we should see a request which contains contacts fetch and a response with all the contacts that we have. And then these contacts that we receive from a server get replaced in the app state, well, yeah, by the response, which is actually a hard-coded array now on the server side instead of the client side. Okay, great. So I think that cuts it for today. Maybe once more to get our heads around it. What we are providing on the server side is the routing for a sente, which is available under this path here. And we're also starting a sente router via this start chsk router stuff. You could also, instead of this, you could also implement your own channel listening for the receiving channel by usual core async functionality. But so I guess this is rather a convenience function here. So we're starting this sente router, calling this function here, passing it the actual receiving channel, and passing it an event handler. And when we receive on the server side a message from the client, then we're going to be processing the message within this event handler. We're binding as you've seen before, it's a whole bunch of data that gets passed into this function, so you have to figure out yourself what you need, and maybe you want to pass some custom data into it as well, and so on. but this is just the basic stuff here. We're just binding ID to the ID and reply function to the potentially provided callback. Then we check if we are really the ID that we want to react upon. So yeah, so you can maybe create a conditional here or something for different use cases or different actions that you want to process. And if we are, then we check if we have a callback function provided. If so, we're going to call that callback function with the data, which is hard-coded right now. So you probably, in the end, you would probably get this from a database or something, of course. So the great part about this is, think about it, calling reply function here is actually calling code that has been provided on the client side. We're calling this code on the server side. Well, semantically it's just like calling a function, although this is a part of code that has been, or a piece of code that has been provided by the client. So that is rather cool stuff, I think. Okay, and once more on the client side, what we're doing here is we're providing a button, or building a button for fetching the contacts. And when you click this button, we're going into this event handler, which is simply sending a message to the server via this sente function, chsk send, providing a simple event with just a namespaced keyword. By the way, the keywords that you provide here must be namespaced. When you just provide a keyword without a namespace, it won't work. We're providing a timeout, and either after the timeout or when the server responds, the callback function that we're providing here gets called. So you have to check if you're in the timeout case, or if you're in the case that the server successfully responded. That's what we're doing here. So we only want to do any stuff when we're not in the timeout case. Okay, so and when it's not the timeout case, so we have received data from the server, then we're just replacing our app state in our client-side code with the stuff, with the data that we got from the server. So I think that's pretty cool. What I'm planning to do is, what I would like to have is abstract away this whole communication stuff between client and server and have my components, for example, be bound to like values that come from a database, and whenever I update them, like we've introduced in a tutorial before, then I'd like to have the modifications that I edited passed right into the database without me having to do anything special about it. There's also a library that aims to do this, which is called omsync, I think. But that's not. Last time I tried it, it has not made the impression that it's actively being maintained, and it's not yet complete. So maybe I'm going to build something my own for this synchronization between client and server. Okay, so that's it for today. I hope it wasn't too complicated. I think it's pretty cool stuff we're doing here, and it has a lot of potential for building great apps that are reactive and also very easy to maintain once you have all this synchronization set up somewhere in the background. Try something yourself to get your head around it, and thanks for watching. Bye bye.